Welcome into PrepAquatics.com. I'm Skyler King. As always, you can email me, Skyler@PrepAquatics.com. You can follow me on Twitter, @SkylerPrep. Coming off another weekend of invitationals before we get into one of the probably 2 or 3 biggest weekend of invitationals of the season coming up this next week. And we'll talk about what the biggest meet of the high school weekend was, and we'll talk about some junior nationals results, because quite honestly, it was hard to find a meet where the top couple kids weren't missing, including the one that I went to. And the headliner there was obviously Hinsdale Central and New Trier. And I say that because, I mean, the primary reason that I did not attend Hinsdale Central New Trier, which I think this is the first time in probably 7 or 8 years that that's the case. I think I went to Bronco Relays at Barrington, many years ago, is I don't like these meets that don't have traditional events, because it gives me no feel for the strength of the team. You got people swimming 9 and 10 events out there, basically, in terms of the distances and the funky relay formats and things like that. It's really hard to get a grasp on what their lineup would look like if this was an actual championship meet. And I didn't realize that was the format at this Rolling Meadows Elk Grove meet, but it ended up being so. Never seen that pool before. It's a pretty nice facility. And still got to see Drew Watson of Cary Grove, who was easily the most impressive kid there. Maine South was there, but of course Dominic Mazurik was not, because he was a junior. So it was an interesting weekend, to say the least. And again, these early weekends, a lot of these teams don't even swim meets on these Saturdays, and so it's not very fruitful. And I can say, based on this experience, I will be at Hinsdale Central New Trier next year, basically no matter who's missing. So to talk about this meet, obviously, these two teams, the first couple weekends, have already started separating themselves from everyone else because of what they can do on their relays. And they look like stone cold locks to probably be first and second in all 3 relays. And today, this Saturday was no exception. So again, just for a quick rundown, for New Trier, there's no Aiden Music, there's no Stuart Timmerman, there's no Charlie Buffton. For Hinsdale, I might even miss somebody here. There was no Noges Bertulis, there was no Nate Harris, there was no Jeffrey Howe, no Henry Guo, no Matt Vatev, and I feel like there's someone that I'm still missing. It might come to me, but anyway. Tons of people missing that otherwise would have been in the lineup playing major roles. And right out of the gate, New Trier 136-1, Hinsdale 136-8 medley relays. For New Trier, Chaplin in the back, which Chaplin very well could be their medley backstroker, depending on how the rest of the lineup shakes out. Could certainly also be Charlie Buffton. Philip Timmerman, his brother, there's probably a 90% chance is going to be the breaststroker. Jared Goldstein, who I think should be the flyer, so Music can go the free relays. He went 49 at the Grand Challenge a few weekends ago. And then Drennan Demarage, 21-5 on the end. I mean, for most teams, what an in-season relay, but they're missing guys on top of that. Hinsdale 136-8, obviously we've already seen them go 35. Loaded, this team's probably 33 high, 34 low right now. And Bay does go the back, 24-3. Bruno Vergara, who's like the number 7 breaststroker on this team, he's a 56. It goes dueling 27-5s. with Timmerman, Chaplin 24-2 in the back. The big differentiator here was Goldstein 22-8 in the fly, David Gow 23-6, and then Marseille was 21-2 on the end for Hinsdale Central. New Trier won threes this relay, and there was probably a feeling at some point in the first part of this meet that New Trier was going to quote-unquote spring the upset. I don't know how much of an upset it would have been if New Trier would have beat them, considering everyone that was missing, even though New Trier was also missing guys. That's why I'm so excited to see these two teams duke it out at Shred Relays, even though I'm told Josh Bay will not be there at New Trier later this year. 200 free, Luke Vatev 145.3. Again, this is Hinsdale Central's freshman, and that's a big time swim. Obviously there's no way of knowing unless you're inside that team on Saturday if there was any sense of how big of a swim this was for him this early in his career. But not that there wasn't other swims, but for a freshman to swim a race that won them this meet, or to put it in other terms, if he doesn't win this race, they lose this meet. Even though it was early on in the day, that was a big swim against Clay Perry, who it was no joke on the 400 relay for New Trier later on. So that was huge, I think, for the early confidence of this kid, who is looking more and more like someone that could potentially get spots in the 200 and potentially the 500 free, depending on how the rest of the lineup shakes out come sectional time. Josh Bay 157.1 in the IM. That had to be a cruising easy swim, kind of like we saw from Jeffrey Howe against Naperville Central in the IM. Jared Goldstein 159.8 and Patrick Bennington 159.9 for Hinsdale Central. 50 free. This was the first races I was kind of following on Meet Mobile, where I really thought that New Trier was probably the favorite to win this meet, and it was because of the freestyles. George Angeloff 21.6, Drennan Deverage 22.3, Brandon Saliga 22.4, Brody Marseille 22.4, Augustus Noriel 22.8. So New Trier goes 1.25, and you're rarely going to see a team that got beat this badly in the sprint freestyles win a meet, because later on here, when we get to the 100 free, New Trier 1-2-3s Hinsdale in the 100 free, which really doesn't bode well for those relays later on. But to offset that, Hinsdale Central, after taking their lumps in the 50, New Trier wins diving. Hinsdale comes out and goes 1-2-3 in the fly. Now, this is one of those things where when you look at the lineup, I was really shocked that this happened, because I thought for sure that Goldstein was going to be in the fly, especially considering Aiden Music's not there to avoid something like this 1-2-3. Philip Timmerman 55.5 is fourth. Hinsdale goes 54.1, 54.5, 55.0. So especially based on what he went in the medley, you would think Goldstein would have a great chance to win the fly. Obviously, you would weaken him somewhere else. But that shot, and someone that wasn't there and didn't have the heat sheet, and I went to look at the results, I expected to see him there. Like I said, 100 free, 1-2-3 for New Trier, 48.4, 48.4, 48.8. And again, this is without Timmerman, without Music, and without Buffton. And so that's pretty incredible depth for any team. 451.1 for Vatev, the freshman, double winner at this meet. Palinkovic 451.2, and then Jonathan Fierro 454.6. Unless they put someone like Music in there, the 500 free is a race that I think we would have said before the season is New Trier's weakest. And so it wasn't crazy to me that it's not like they have a superstar, but Hinsdale Central does have quality depth in the 500, where if you're lacking there, they can certainly punish you, and that's what happened here. So 3 straight races, pretty rare when you have teams this good, and that kind of shows you the holes in the lineup based on who's missing, to have 3 straight races with a 1, 2, 3 back and forth. Obviously, if you have a team that's way better than another team, it might all be 1, 2, 3s across the board, but 2 teams that are both this good, to have 1, 2, 3s in 3 straight races is pretty unheard of. 200 relay, New Trier 128-1 wins it, Hinsdale 129-0. New Trier won all 3 relays in this meet, and that just goes to show you the resiliency that Hinsdale Central's kind of second wave of kids had to have in their individual races to pull this off, because it's a tough road to hoe in a dual meet if you lose all 3 relays, because for those that don't know, relay scoring 8-4-2. So even if you 2-3 every relay, which Hinsdale Central did not, they got 1-3 in the medley, you lose by 2 each time. And so right off the bat, you're down 6 points from just the other team getting first. And in Hinsdale's case, they were down an additional 4 because New Trier got third in the medley. So 10 points down after relays, plus New Trier wins diving, and Hinsdale was just able to chip away with their depth throughout the rest of the day. Brody Marseille 53-2 wins the back, Chaplin 55-2, Frankie Adamo 55-9, and Hinsdale Central goes 1-3-5 here in the back. In the breast, Bay wins it, no surprise there. New Trier goes 2-3-4, Goldstein, Timmerman, Josh Kim. And so it all came down to this final relay, and the way the relays had been going, you thought New Trier could potentially pull off a 1-3, having not been there. I didn't have a great feel for who had swum what up to that point. Obviously, I was at another meet. I was checking back and forth, but wasn't really keeping track without having the lineup in front of me. And New Trier just didn't have enough guys left in that last relay, which, again, testament to Hinsdale Central's depth. New Trier 3-13-6, Hinsdale 3-13-7, and crazy how, so Hinsdale Central splits it. Brandon Saliga 48-8, Luke Vodtev 47-8, Frankie Adamo 49-1, Brody Marseille 47-9. New Trier splits a 3-13-6, 49-9 for Augustus Noriel, 46-9 George Angeloff, 50.1 Wilhelm Chaplin, 46-5 Clay Perry. Crazy splits back and forth like that. It had to be a roller coaster race as that was playing out. And Hinsdale Central actually gets third and fourth, 321-8, 324-7. New Trier 326-3 for their B relay. But both these teams, even in the water on Saturday, were incredibly talented, and I can't wait to see them go head-to-head at New Trier's place in the middle of January. That should be the best invitational of the year, as it typically is. And like I said, no Josh Bay, but you should still see a much more full-strength Hinsdale Central than you got against New Trier today. And you would anticipate that all the New Trier's kids are going to be there for a meet at their home pool. So quickly to highlight some of these swims that happened in juniors. I've got an alphabetical because that was the easiest way for me to kind of find everybody in Meet Mobile. Kyle Algrim 430.9. Man, I hope he wasn't tapered at all and just threw a suit on, because I really expected better from Algrim. Because if he can't get into the mid 420s, he's going to get left behind by the improvement of everyone else around the state, which some of it we'll cover here. Starting with the Barrington guys, Rylan Anselm 140.4, 427.7, Baccaro 429.7. I'm only giving you times of the high school events because that's what we care about in terms of here. Some of the Hinsdale Central guys, Nate Harris, 24/7 50 breast. And I point that out just because we don't know for sure what Hinsdale Central is going to do with that medley. Harris seems like an unlikely fit for the medley because I think he's a lock to swim the 200 free. But we will see how that goes. 55-0 in the 100 breast for him, 21-150, 44-3 relay split, which is what really stood out for me for Harris. Because we know he wants to be on that 400 relay, and 44-3 with Henry Guo already being 45-3 flat out at state last year. Noges Bertulis went 45-3 flat out here, and Jeffrey Howe 44-8 relay split here. He was 44 relay split last year as well. It starts shaping up for another potential breaking of that 400 relay record for this Hinsdale Central team, which would be pretty incredible considering the seniors that they lost. To run down the rest of Bertulis' day, 21-6 or meet, 21-6 fly, 21-2 flat out, 20.4 relay in the 50, 48-6 fly, 54-7 breast to go along with that 45-3 leadoff that I mentioned. Jeffrey Howe, 21-2 50 fly, 47-900 fly, and then 20.3 44-8 relay split. Potentially, if Jeffrey Howe is on the 200 relay, that could potentially push them closer to making another run at that record as well. But I don't know for sure if the drop off in the fly would potentially cost him the medley record. But Jeffrey Howe is definitely valuable enough that he should be on all three relays if he wasn't so great individually. Some other times, Charlie Buffton continues to do it, 47-0 in the IM. If he goes 47-0 a couple weeks ago, he outduels Jeffrey Howe when they went head-to-head. Velazar Philippov from Loyola, 23-5, 50 back, 50.400 back. 23-5, 50 back. This kid, I feel like this kid should be a 48 backstroker. He's got to be able to put together that back 50 a little better. Hopefully we see that at the end of this year. 50.2 fly, 46-5 relay split in the 100 for him. Again, I think Loyola is going to have two really nice relays at the end of the year in that medley and in the 400. Willem Huggins from Carbondale, 21-0, 45-6, 49-7 backstroke. So a guy kind of on an island by himself, high school wise. You could see him in any of those three events, two of three. Nathan Kuhn, 56-6 breaststroke for Wabanzi. The breaststrokers went off in this meet, by the way. Max Goach, 21-0, 44-6 flat out, 20.2 relay split for the Naperville Central Junior. Jacob Kramer DeKalb, I thought this last swim of his was particularly impressive. 20.8, 46.2 freestyle, 47.8 fly. So, I mean, we should absolutely not see him in the 100 free. 47.8 fly is a big-time performance. Stevie Groot, Ignatius, 20.8, 45.9. The Ignatius guys, I thought, all swam pretty well. Matt Vatev, Hinsdale Central sophomore, 150.2 IM, 55.01 breaststroke, which means he's like the number 4 IMer on the team, and the number 3 or 4 breaststroker. Even though I think if Jeffrey Howe is one of those breaststrokers, he's not going to swim it. We'll see what Bertulis potentially does. And Nate Harris would also be in the mix there, but I don't know if it makes sense for him to swim the breaststroke and also swim the 400 relay. And so, maybe Harris goes 200 free and free relays, and not the breaststroke, and that opens up that spot for Vatev. Jonathan Wang, 55.07 breaststroke, which just is like dime a dozen. So many strong breaststroke swims. Chase Mayer, 140.2, 430.1, 200, 500. Again, kind of like Algrim. Hopefully he wasn't tapered for that. I expected him to break 30 in the 500 at least. Matt Zurich from Maine South, 21-0, 45.6, 20.0, 43.9 relays. Aiden Music, 47.6 in the fly. Timmerman, 48.7 fly, 55.8 breast, 151.2 IM. That seemed kind of disappointing after the 48.7 and the 55.8. PJ Nolan for Ignatius, 20.6, 45.5, 139.2. Alex Parkinson, 141.3, 430.9. You know, the trend there is these distance guys, it is kind of hard to not fully taper. If we're going to say that most of these kids aren't fully tapered because they're in the middle of the high school season, to go a really good time in the distance free. The one guy that stood out was the guy I feel really good about, and because that's Charlie Tracy, 426.8. Again, I picked him to win before the season. That's a time that puts him, in my opinion, in the catbird seat amongst all these guys that are very similar. And, you know, I think it'll be fascinating, again, to see. This should be the premier race, and maybe not in terms of, like, how fast the winner goes, but just a mosh pit of dudes all about in the same range, duking it out for these spots. Diego Rosario, 49.9 fly, and Siri Wang, 56.1 breast. The Stevenson teammates, and I saved these two guys for last because they were the one that was just clearly the best performer at this meet from Illinois, and then one that I was super excited to see bounce back after he's kind of had an off year. The off year guy, Colin Zhang, Stevenson, 148.3 IM, 53.5 breaststroke. Great to see for this kid, a guy who was a state champ 2 years ago when Stevenson won state, and just hasn't seemed to recapture the magic since then. Big time performance from him, and you know it's great to see. And he's always been fun to watch. As I've been covering him the last couple of years, and so excited to see him get back on the horse and be better than ever as we get into his final high school season. And then the guy that was clearly just head and shoulders above all the other Illinois kids is Brady Johnson. This is a guy that announced at this meet that whatever he ends up swimming, you don't want him in your race. And I come out of this thinking he should swim the 50 and the 100. But if he swims the back or the breast, you also don't want him in your race. Obviously, he's the defending state champ in the backstroke. So 20.3, 50, 44.6 flat out in the 100, 43.2 relay split, 47.7 in the back, and then 23.7, 53.3. Breaststroke. Obviously it's split, but the 53.3 is flat out. Wow. What swims. Defending state champion, obviously was not at this meet. He's also a 53 breaststroker. So we've got no less than 53 breaststrokers, a number of 54s, a number of 55s. The breaststroke is also very much that might be kind of the 500 on steroids in terms of what it's going to take to get top 8. We had the 100 free at the girls meet where 51s were getting 20th. That might be the breaststroke at the boys meet. It's not for the faint of heart. If you can swim something else, do not swim the breaststroke. Now Brady Johnson is the type of kid that's so good that he can obviously go the breaststroke, and not many people are going to beat him. However, the competition is definitely thinner in the 50-100 than it is in the breaststroke if you're Brady Johnson. So that does it for what we had this past weekend. Again, coming up, Nico Invitational. In my opinion, when you look at the field, by far the best invitational we get before the calendar turns every year. You got your Napervilles, you got your St. Charleses. Really, if you look at the top teams this year, the only team we don't get from the west suburbs is Marmion. You know, Marmion goes to LT, or actually, I think LT goes to Marmion, actually. I think I have that reversed. Cadet relays, again, relay meet, can't do it. And, I'll see Marmion at the Evanston Invitational. That first weekend we come back for invitationals in January. That's also the first time I'll see St. Ignatius, so looking forward to that one. But this should be the biggest invitational of the year, where we see Hinsdale Central full strength, because as I mentioned, no Josh Bay at New Trier. Wabanzi should be full strength when they swam that tri-meet against each other. Wabanzi was missing guys at the U.S. Open. Bay was missing at the U.S. Open. And again, this format, 4 deep, you can go individually, multiple relays. This is a format that HC thrives in. I don't know how many points they scored last year, but they're certainly going to probably make a run at some type of scoring record again, because they are so deep in, especially when you talk IM, fly, breaststroke. But even as we touched on that New Trier result, to a lesser extent, the 500 free, they have a number of guys that should score well, and it's going to be interesting to see who else steps up. I think Wabanzi is an upper class leading team. They're going to step up and swim well. Who else can do it? Aldrin from St. Charles, you would think, is going to step up. What's Parkinson going to look like for Neuqua Valley? And Max Goach, obviously, from Naperville Central will be there. What do these kids coming down from any type of mini taper that they did for junior nationals look like? Regardless, there should be a lot of fast swims, and I'm looking forward to it. Also, for those of you in the northern part of the state, Lake County, we'll see Stevenson, obviously at full strength in a real championship meet format, and see what they look like. That's the one team that's there that, if we could bring them down to Neuqua, would really spice things up even more. But we will certainly be breaking down all the top performances from both these invitationals as we head into Christmas break, going to next week. And then we'll have that week after we do the recap, and we kind of have that off week where there aren't any meets. We'll do mid-season predictions, include all the freshmen and all the shakeups that we've seen from this early part of the season. As always, you can email me, Skyland@prepaquatics.com. You can follow me on Twitter @SkylandPrep. We'll be back next week here at prepaquatics.com.